Nick here, Revs Customs. Today we're going to show you how to assemble the front end on our drag bikes. We're going to start with the triple tree setup. Obviously, if you've already had one of these bikes, you've taken it apart, and these will be the parts you've got. This is excluding some of the front axle stuff and your steering mechanism. We're just focusing on the triple tree. So you're going to start by, you're going to need a bearing, the long screw, which is 30mm. Bearing goes through. The first wash spacer goes on. Now you don't need to really lock tight these, because once this is all together, it sort of clamps itself together. You just want to make sure it's finger tight. Now the first one is going to go through this plate here. It's going to go, it's not really matter which way you put it at this point. So put it through. Then you're going to take your next bearing. Your next bearing is going to go into this little plate here. It's going to press fit in. Now this one wants to face downwards, so you can see here it's going to mount out flat to that piece that you just screwed on. And then you take another 5mm spacer, screw it all the way down. At this point it's probably a little bit easier to just get the right nut driver. You're going to screw it. Doesn't need to be super tight, just finger tight. And then you need to put on your next plate, which is going to insert the bearing in. So this one, instead of facing downwards, is going to face upwards. Now it's done in this particular order to help lock everything together. And then you're going to take your next washer, or spacer should I say, you're going to screw that down. You don't need any shims, these don't bind up, you can do them pretty tight, and because they're small diameter they don't have any interference with the parts. So then you should have it at this stage. So far we should have, this is looking from the bottom of the bike, so you're going to down, down, and then up, and then the next one goes up as well. So you can put the bearing into here. Make sure we put it in. Now it's going to go upwards as well to match the other one, which locks everything together. And at this point you're going to put your nylock nut on, and you can do it, don't need to do it up tight at this point, but because at the moment it's going to be a little bit sloppy until you put this into your triple tree mount, so you can leave that loose for now. And that pretty much assembles most of it. So the last little part you've got to do here is you've got to take your short little M3s, and you've got to put the ones between your, these like the little fork adapters that they slide onto. Do that one up. Put your second one in. Snug those up a little bit. And that gets most of it put together. So now you've got to assemble it onto your triple tree mount. So at this point is when you want to start tightening down this nut here. That's why I just left it loose, it's almost a little bit easier. So you're going to take your nut driver. I did put shims in these to start with on the top on the screw, but we'll discover that with the nut you can pretty much tighten it down as much as you can, and it's still nice and free. So I mean, the reason we've gone with a sophisticated setup, we've seen other units guys have just done literally have it off a single point, whereas this spreads the load a little bit more. You may bend the screw, that is what it's designed to do, that's designed to be a fail point, so we don't damage any of the carbon or any of the printed parts. It's going to be a lot easier if you guys are international to pick up a screw rather than having to buy a new part. So now that you've got that together, you're going to start to dress your front trees. Obviously these have been disassembled all together. This is also going to show you how to do this from scratch. Okay, so now you've got all your parts here. You're going to have your bearings, you'll have a couple of shims, or washers that I say. You're going to have your long screw, and you also have your nylock nut which holds it all together. So the easiest way of doing this is, once again, your bearing's going to go in. Doesn't matter which side at the moment, obviously you're going to have to mirror when you do the other side. Bolts goes through, and you're going to screw your washer, your spacer down. It's a very similar setup to the front end and the way it all goes together. This is the one area you may want to do some very low strength Loctite, because obviously you want to be able to get this apart again later on. Put the shim on, put a wheel on. Obviously this doesn't have a tyre, it's just a demonstration. Other shim goes on. Space is going to lock down. Once again, at this point, if you want to, use some low strength Loctite. Tighten that down. Now at this point I normally leave it as this, and then clip on the assembly this way. Sometimes this can be a little bit tough to get on. As you can see, it's not square up. I normally find a rubber mallet if you need to. These are designed to be quite a nice press fit, so press that on. Then obviously you're going to mirror the way your bearing went in. So the bearing's going to go in. Line it up with your shaft. Press that in. Sure the bearing sits in there flush. And you're going to screw your Loctite nut down. Just finger tight for now. Okay, so obviously you're going to have more than just your tie rods, but obviously it's going to be full steering linkage. You're going to have your screws for the end, you're going to have your little washers, and you're going to have your 15mm standoff. So you can take your screw, put your screw through, washer on that, and you put your standoff through. Tighten that up. And same for the other side. Just tightens that all down. So sometimes you still need to really force on that. We're going to update these files. The original ones did have a screw that went through here, but we put it in the wrong spot. So we're going to reinstate the lower screw here, which will help pull that in, so you're not having to rely so much on pulling the axle in to square everything up. It'll naturally pull in, so that'll be on a later version. So at this point you're going to tighten up your axle. This has got to be done sort of in a particular sort of strength. Too tight and it'll bind everything up. Too loose it'll be quite sloppy. So you can sort of just see by how square the arms are with how they are. Sometimes if you go too tight, it doesn't spin, so you sort of back it off, sort of just a little bit of a turn, and then you run it again, and it's pretty smooth. Obviously you can play around with this and get it absolutely perfect, but you sort of just want to go a little bit of a turn at a time to ensure that there's no play sideways, which there is no play. It's nice and tight and it rolls free. So that's how you assemble your front end. So at this point here you're going to bolt it back into your bike. I'm sure you can work it out. You would have taken it out, so you're going to have your standoff through there, and your 2 bolts that it's going to slot the whole front end back in. So that shows you how to get your front end back together. Obviously taking it apart, it's going to reverse this. I'm sure if you're watching this video already, you've worked out how to take it apart and you're struggling to get it back together. So hope this helps. Until the next video, have a good one.